Picture a bustling coffee shop alive with clicks and beeps. Espresso machines hiss, cups clink, screens glow as patrons scroll. To your left, a couple angles for a selfie. To your right, a group leans in, words bouncing off the walls like rapid-fire ping-pong balls. Amid this swirl sits a lone man, no phone in hand, no laptop on the table. Instead, he wears earbuds and focuses on a slim volume of Stoic philosophy, undistracted by the digital rush. He's different, not lonely or desperate, but completely at ease in his own company. He doesn't crave a deluge of likes or network validation. He refuses the frantic grab for attention that surrounds him, and that, in its quiet way, makes him the most dangerous person in the room. Why? Why does society quake at someone who doesn't need constant approval? Why do we brand him odd or antisocial for choosing silence over an endless scroll? Because every ad, every notification, every match on a dating app depends on your sense of lack, on convincing you that you're incomplete without more. If no one felt incomplete, advertisers would lose their power. Social platforms would stall. Every industry built on your insecurities would collapse. When someone learns to be comfortable with themselves, they won't bow to marketing peer pressure or propaganda. Silence becomes a shield against manipulation. Without the ache for validation, no slogan can sway them. That's the peril. A person free from those shackles no longer follows the herd. No campaign can define them. And when thought becomes independent, it becomes unpredictable, dangerous to systems built on certainty. Imagine if nobody ever felt lacking. Billboards shouting, "Live your best life," would fall silent. Dating apps would gather dust without swipes. Social media feeds, engineered to trap your attention, would vanish without your hunger for connection. Every industry built on your sense of not enough would collapse. Walk through any mall or scroll any feed, and you see it clearly packaged solutions to mask emptiness. Health brands promise a new smoothie will fix your confidence. Fashion labels hint a coat will make you admired. Tech companies design endless feeds so you never pause, because in that pause, you might realize you don't need them. When you feel incomplete, you fill up on consumption. When you're whole, you resist. Consider dating apps. Swipe right and you temporarily feel validated. Swipe left and self-doubt creeps back in. But what if you discovered your worth doesn't pivot on another's tap on a screen? Suddenly, you fracture the foundation of those platforms. They need your insecurities to exist. Social media magnifies this dynamic. Each like briefly feeds your self-esteem. Brands pay influencers to keep you hooked. Buy this lipstick, everyone will adore you. Take this trip, your life will feel complete. But a person uninterested in that rush breaks the cycle. Deactivate the account, lose the need for virtual applause, and the algorithm loses its power. Every ad, every trending hashtag, every political slogan banks on fear and belonging. If you don't vote this way, you'll be left behind. Without our product, you're missing out. But a solitary thinker pauses and asks, why do I feel incomplete? Who benefits if I stay that way? When you resist that pull, you expose the mechanism. You can't be sold, silenced, or persuaded through fear. That's why society fears the person who doesn't need anything outside themselves, because they become immune to the levers of control built on your insecurities. To see how this immunity develops, we turn to two figures who rejected the premise of lack. One in the height of power and one at the edge of convention. Their ways show you how to break free from the idea that you need another person, product or platform to be whole. Envision a ruler who commands legions, yet each evening retreats to write in a private journal instead of basking in victory. This was Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, who saw real conquest as mastery over his own mind. While Rome clamored for spectacle, he embraced silence as both shield and sword. Each night after councils and campaigns, Marcus conducted his evening review. By dim lamplight, he asked himself, which desires this day did I pursue that I didn't truly need? Where did fear dictate my actions? In which moments did I seek approval at the expense of integrity? These weren't casual jottings, but rigorous interrogations of impulse, peeling back layers until only essential truths remained. All cruelty springs from weakness, he reminded himself whenever tempted to wield power for its own sake. He understood that a person dependent on applause is easy prey for manipulation, so he deliberately built psychological muscle. Compliments fluttered his way, but he asked, do I need this praise, or is it a distraction? Over time, flattery and slander alike became powerless. his self-worth grounded in reason, not crowds. He also embraced discomfort to condition his mind. Cold baths, occasional fasting, and simple bedding shaped a fortress against external turmoil. By enduring physical unease, he prepared himself to face emotional storms with equanimity. In the stillness of his quarters, free from sycophants and spin, he confronted questions of duty. Should I lead a campaign or divert resources to rebuild a ravaged city? Each decision came from purpose, not popularity. He even reminded himself daily of mortality. Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly. That reflection didn't cripple him with dread. Instead, it spurred deliberate action. Time lost to trivial pursuits could never be reclaimed, so when the empire demanded leadership, he responded with integrity. Marcus exemplifies how solitude becomes the crucible for self-mastery. He built a character unbending to external pressure, not through grand displays, but through quiet reflection. His reign didn't depend on adoring crowds. It depended on an unshakable inner citadel. If power without self-knowledge breeds tyranny, then solitude without discipline breeds aimlessness. Marcus chose discipline, turning isolation into an arena where he forged the impenetrable armor of Stoic wisdom. Centuries later, Friedrich Nietzsche emerged in a Europe chained by religious dogma and inherited morals. He argued that most people sleepwalk through life living by a script written by others. He declared that such submission makes you a slave, a being controlled rather than in control. To be free, he insisted one must tear down inherited value systems and construct a personal code of ethics. He coined the term Übermensch or overman to describe someone unafraid to stand alone, rejecting slave morality, which extols humility and obedience in favor of master morality, which esteems strength, creativity, and self-determination. A free individual doesn't ask, "What does my community expect of me?" but "What do I will for myself?" The individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe, he wrote. When you stop questioning and accept every rule uncritically, you become predictable, pliable, and thus controllable. By continually interrogating beliefs, you become a living critique of the status quo, an unsettling force to any institution built on conformity. Consider modern parallels. Corporate cultures demanding allegiance to company values. Echo chambers that silence dissent, political movements labeling diverging opinions as traitorous. Those who refuse the given narrative are cast out or silenced. Nietzsche urged the courage to look into the abyss, to face the void of uncertainty without a pre-packaged moral anchor. Few can withstand that confrontation. Many cling to comforting illusions. But those who do become architects of meaning, daily building values from scratch. Nietzsche himself spent his final years in relative isolation, turning personal agony into philosophical fire. He questioned every sacred cow. What is good? Who decided that good is good? By tearing down centuries of unexamined assumptions, he urged individuals to become dangerous by rejecting inherited values. When you create your own moral code, no corporate slogan or political slogan can sway you. You are unpredictable. What if your chosen path contradicts widely accepted beliefs? And if that inspires others to do likewise, you spark a revolution of minds. Yet forging your own values carries immense weight. It demands shouldering every consequence, intense loneliness, self-doubt, and the burden of absolute responsibility. Many will never cross this bridge, for the precipice is too great. Swallow the void or crumble into despair. The Übermensch, however, strides across and forges meaning through acts that spring from individual will. In Nietzsche's view, solitude isn't mere absence of company, but rejection of the herd's moral voice. By embracing existential responsibility, you become dangerous because you no longer serve as a cog in a predictable machine. You're the living challenge to every presumption. What if I choose values that contradict yours? When individuals do this en masse, they become architects of a new world, and that is the most dangerous revolution of all. It's easy to conflate loneliness with solitude, but they are fundamentally different. Loneliness is a state of lack, a painful sense of incompleteness without others. Solitude is a state of wholeness, a deliberate choice to be alone, discovering peace in your own company. Society paints these two states with the same brush because it benefits from keeping you confused. A lonely person becomes a consumer, endlessly seeking products or experiences to fill a void. A person practicing solitude doesn't need to buy distractions because they already feel complete. Those who feel lonely chase external remedies, scrolling social feeds, attending every gathering, filling calendars with calls only to amplify the underlying ache. That internal buzzing of unfiltered thoughts is a mirror showing how uncomfortable they are with themselves. They drown it in noise. Netflix binges, group chats, and social events perpetuating the cycle. Solitude, by contrast, requires embracing that buzzing. The solitary individual steps away from the loop and understands that sitting with unfiltered thoughts is an invitation to confront fear and insecurity. Rather than a punishment, solitude becomes a practice of abundance, trusting that whatever surfaces in silence is valuable. Society discourages solitude by labeling it antisocial or odd. A person choosing a solitary hike over a weekend party is dismissed as weird. Journaling at home instead of scrolling Instagram invites the reclusive label. These judgments are social controls. By stigmatizing solitude, institutions ensure you don't discover your own self-sufficiency. Once you taste true solitude and realize you don't need external validation, you become immune to mass influence. Many confuse enforced isolation due to illness or relocation with voluntary solitude. In that scenario, you might feel lonely without knowing how to transform that feeling into wholeness. True solitude, however, is a choice you carve out, moments of silence, sitting without distraction, allowing thoughts and emotions to surface without judgment. In doing so, you learn to observe your mind rather than be swept away by it. Over time, you build emotional resilience and creativity. Solitude redefines relationships. When you feel whole without others, you choose companionship from a place of abundance, not need. Friendships deepen because they become authentic rather than codependent. Romantic partnerships flourish when neither party clings to the other for validation. In short, loneliness is a trap that drives you into perpetual consumption, seeking external fixes for an internal void. Solitude liberates you, showing that the most powerful relationship you can cultivate is the one with yourself. Once you recognize this difference, you see how society's labeling of solitude as deviant is a tactic to keep you tethered to dependency. Crossing that threshold, acknowledging you don't need anyone to feel complete, is the first step toward becoming truly dangerous in the most liberating sense. We've seen how society thrives on your sense of lack and how Marcus Aurelius and Nietzsche charted paths to independence. Now let's examine 4 essential qualities that transform solitude from mere isolation into a source of unstoppable strength. These pillars, radical self-honesty, value independence, emotional self-sufficiency, and intellectual courage, interlock to form an internal fortress no social force can breach. Most people tiptoe around painful truths, denying envy, deflecting responsibility, or masking fear with distractions. Radical self-honesty means refusing to lie to yourself, no matter how reassuring the lie might feel. When you catch yourself scrolling social media to escape insecurity, you pause and ask, what emotion am I avoiding? By consistently interrogating motives, you develop an uncanny ability to detect self-deception early. Admitting fear gives you power to address it. Pretending it doesn't exist amplifies it. Over time, honesty becomes your shield. External narratives lose their grip when your mind rests on clear, unvarnished self-awareness. Once honesty uncovers the beliefs you've unconsciously absorbed from parents, peers, or culture, you face a choice: retain them or discard them. Value independence means forging a moral compass from your own reflections and experiences. You don't default to what everyone else does. Instead, you ask, is this principle serving me, or is it a comfort blanket? When society exalts a career path or a political stance, you examine whether it aligns with your genuine goals. Building personal values may feel disorienting at first, but as you embrace this freedom, you become unpredictable. Campaigns, slogans, and peer pressure lose power when you base choices on self-determined principles. In solitude, you inevitably encounter raw emotions: fear, sadness, longing, anger. Instead of reflexively seeking relief in distractions, you pause to name and observe each feeling. Is this anxiety envy? Trace its origin. Did I feel overlooked at work? Naming diffuses its power. Next, you ask, what do I need right now? Sometimes a glass of water or a short walk helps. Other times, brief journaling suffices. Consistently doing this builds an internal toolkit, breathing techniques, mini meditations, or a quick nature walk that you can deploy without leaning on anyone else. Advertisers and manipulators exploit emotional vulnerabilities. Buy this to feel worthy, but when you manage your emotions autonomously, those tactics fail. You hold the ability to find calm within making you impervious to external emotional triggers. Even after mastering honesty, forging values, and cultivating emotional resilience, you face the final challenge: the courage to think thoughts that may offend or alienate. Intellectual courage means embracing uncertainty and entertaining questions that society often dreads. It means risking disapproval to pursue an idea wherever evidence leads, even if it contradicts family traditions or popular opinion. To develop this, you might expose yourself to viewpoints you find threatening, read articles from opposing political perspectives, attend debates that challenge your beliefs, or discuss ideas with people who disagree. This doesn't mean forsaking your convictions. It ensures they stand on reason, not convenience. Each time you entertain an unpopular viewpoint, you shrink the fear of dissent. Your mind becomes a fortress immune to shallow arguments and social shaming. Though each pillar stands on its own, they thrive in synergy. Radical honesty reveals inconsistencies between inherited beliefs and your true principles, sparking the construction of an independent value system. As you live by those values, emotional self-sufficiency ensures you won't capitulate when discomfort arises. Finally, intellectual courage empowers you to refine both your values and self-understanding, preventing stagnation. Together, these pillars create internal sovereignty. When someone tries to guilt-trip you into conformity, you see through it. When a brand promises fulfillment in a bottle, you recognize the ploy. When a political narrative looms, you subject it to reasoned scrutiny. Because each pillar fortifies the next, you become someone unbuyable, unsilenceable, and unpredictable. When you achieve harmony among these four pillars, you stand as a unique mind interacting with the world on your own terms. That is dangerous in the most constructive sense. You can't be easily bought, silenced, or misled. To corporate interests, you're a non-consumer, an anomaly. To political institutions, you're a nonconformist, an enigma. To social circles, you're someone who doesn't chase belonging out of desperation. And to yourself, you're someone who knows true freedom. In a world where mass conformity reigns, that combination is revolutionary. Embracing solitude and cultivating these four pillars can feel liberating, yet this path carries real costs. Before you dive deeper, recognize the sacrifices that come with refusing external validation. When you prioritize your inner life over social approval, others might label you aloof or arrogant. Friends may whisper, "You've changed," accusing you of being too intense or anti-fun. Family might worry you're withdrawing, calling your solitary habits unhealthy or antisocial. Society equates being alone with unhappiness. If you skip parties or stop posting online, friends murmur, "Why don't you join us?" Casual concern becomes coercion. You'll regret missing out. Who will you lean on if you need help? Overcoming this stigma requires resilience. Accept that others may misunderstand you, but remain calm in your conviction. As you grow more autonomous, you might distance yourself from people who once shaped your decisions. Friends who thrived on group gatherings, weekend trips, or late-night chats may feel rejected when you choose a quiet evening reading or journaling. Romantic partners seeking closeness may struggle with your self-sufficiency and drift away. Mentors and colleagues expecting you to follow a predefined path. Promotion's social status might be puzzled when you reject that route. These losses sting because they reveal how reliant those relationships were on mutual dependency rather than genuine affinity. Grieving the roles people once played becomes part of accepting that relationships built on need rarely endure. Being comfortable alone doesn't guarantee immunity to loneliness. Sometimes it amplifies it. You may notice family gatherings you're not part of, or see friends celebrating milestones without you. Doubts creep in. Have I chosen wrongly? Am I missing something essential? These moments can be disorienting, reminding you that you've stepped off the shared narrative. In those times, differentiate fleeting loneliness from the deeper fulfillment of solitude. When loneliness creeps in, return to your practices. Journaling, meditation, walking to remember why you chose this path. The sting fades when you recall that solitude's reward is lasting agency, not momentary distraction. No culture applauds nonconformity indefinitely. If you resist social norms, declining group events, or ignoring Instagram trends, you'll face escalating pressure. Maybe you'd be happier if you joined us. Why don't you apply for that promotion? Maybe you'd be happier if you joined us. Why don't you apply for that promotion? When casual comments morph into pointed suggestions, you'll regret missing out. Recognize them as tests. Friends and family may resort to guilt. We miss the old you or project fear. Who will you turn to in trouble? Staying true requires balancing your need for human connection with your commitment to self-determination. You don't have to isolate completely, but you also don't abandon your practices to appease others. Crafting your own values brings limitless freedom, but also unlimited responsibility. There's no safety net of everyone else does it this way. Choosing an unconventional career means facing financial uncertainty and potential social alienation. Embracing contrarian beliefs invites backlash or ostracism. The weight of every choice rests solely on you. Mistakes can sting more deeply because there's no communal rationale to share the blame. Yet many who embrace this burden report a profound sense of agency. Even mistakes become lessons they own fully, rather than wounds inflicted by societal expectations. After weighing these costs, you might ask, is solitude worth the trouble? Consider what you gain when you release reliance on others for self-worth. You unlock genuine creativity. You stop chasing hollow achievements and start pursuing projects that resonate, writing a novel, launching a mission-driven venture, or dedicating time to a cause without promise of immediate rewards. You form relationships based on authentic choice rather than obligation. The peace of solitude becomes a fertile ground for visionary thinking and emotional depth many never experience. Yes, you pay a price in lost connections and occasional isolation, but you secure something far more precious: inner sovereignty. This path isn't for everyone, but for those who walk it, the toll is small compared to the cost of living as an unthinking participant in a system built to profit from your insecurities. When you look back not with regret but quiet conviction, you'll see that the freedom you've won far outweighs the sacrifices endured. Knowing the problem is only half the battle. The real challenge is translating philosophical insights into daily habits. How do you train your mind, emotions, and values so thoroughly that no marketing pitch or social pressure can hijack your sense of self? Below are practical steps tested over centuries, used by thinkers from Stoic emperors to renegade philosophers, that guide you toward genuine independence. Expect resistance from your instincts and from others. That resistance proves you're on the right path. Begin with stillness. The most profound exercise is simple: embrace a few minutes of nothingness each day. Sit quietly, no phone, no music, no book, and notice thoughts or emotions as they surface. You might feel an itch to check messages or anxiety about a looming task. That's precisely why you sit still. Each time you resist the urge to flee your own mind, you build resilience. Start with 5 minutes, then gradually increase to 10 or 20. As silence becomes less threatening, you'll find yourself scrolling less mindlessly. Recognizing I'm seeking distraction because I feel anxious is the first step to reclaiming your attention. Adopt an evening review inspired by Marcus Aurelius. Each night, journal 3 probing questions. Which desires did I act on today that I didn't truly need? What fears drove my choices? Fear of rejection, failure, or facing myself? When did I seek approval and why? Answer without sugarcoating. If you spent half an hour refreshing your feed to feel less anxious, write it down. If you withheld an opinion in a meeting to avoid judgment, admit it. Over time, patterns emerge, revealing how often you surrender agency for fleeting praise. When you see those patterns, you can choose differently, refuse the staged perfect selfie, or speak up despite fearing backlash. Consistency in this evening ritual builds a reflex before seeking validation. You ask, is this choice mine, or am I playing someone else's game? Challenge deep-seated beliefs. You've inherited countless assumptions about success, relationships, happiness from parents, peers, and culture. To craft your own values, pick one belief you've never questioned. Maybe it's, I need a high salary to feel successful, or I can't be happy unless I'm in a romantic relationship. For a week, interrogate it from all angles. Read articles arguing the opposite stories of people thriving on modest incomes or happily single. Write objections and counter-arguments. If you find that money or a partner doesn't guarantee fulfillment, you gain permission to break away from that standard. This exercise isn't one-off, it's ongoing. Whenever you catch yourself parroting common wisdom, pause and ask, is this really my belief, or am I just echoing someone else? Cultivate emotional self-reliance. Emotions can flare. Uninvited, a text message triggers jealousy. A meme sparks anger. Uncertainty breeds panic. Instead of immediately calling a friend or buying something on impulse, train yourself to pause. When discomfort arises, take a deep breath and name it. This is anxiety. Trace its origin. Did I feel overlooked at work? Naming diffuses its power. Next ask, what do I need right now? Sometimes a glass of water or a short walk helps. Other times, brief journaling suffices. Consistently doing this builds an internal toolkit, breathing techniques, mini meditations, or a quick nature walk that you can deploy without leaning on anyone else. Advertisers and manipulators exploit emotional vulnerabilities. Buy this to feel worthy. But when you manage your emotions autonomously, those tactics fail. You hold the ability to find calm within, making you impervious to external emotional triggers. Exercise intellectual courage. To think for yourself deliberately, expose yourself to ideas you find threatening. If your social feed mirrors one political perspective, follow a channel representing the opposite. If your industry values only conventional career paths, explore alternative stories. Creatives who swapped stability for passion. Attend debates where disagreement is encouraged. When you hear an argument that unsettles you, pause instead of dismissing it. Why do you feel that way? What evidence supports your view? Doing so doesn't mean forsaking your convictions. It ensures they stand on reason, not convenience. Each time you hold space for an unpopular viewpoint, you shrink the fear of dissent. Your mind becomes a fortress immune to shallow arguments and social shaming. Anticipate and navigate pushback. Friends and family will notice your transformation. They may tease you for skipping gatherings, accuse you of being distant, or suggest you're overthinking life. Expect these reactions. Understand that resisting unspoken rules often triggers discomfort in others. If someone complains, respond calmly, I'm experimenting with quiet time to see if it helps me focus. I value our friendship, but I also need this space. If family spreads concern, reassure them, I love you. I'm just exploring different ways to be present. Acknowledge their worries without abandoning your practices. Over time, those who truly care will respect your boundaries. Those who don't will fade away. Measure your progress. How do you know if these steps work? Notice if the urge to check notifications diminishes. Observe when you hold back in a meeting, not out of fear of social exile, but because you speak from conviction. Track how often you choose solitude to create writing, reading, walking, rather than to escape. As these markers increase, you'll realize you're forging the dangerous independence you seek. By weaving these habits, embracing stillness, conducting honest evening reviews, questioning inherited beliefs, managing emotions internally, and daring to think freely, you construct an inner citadel. No external force can breach. In that fortress, you become, in Nietzsche's words, someone beyond good and evil, a person whose worth, values, and purpose come from within, not from the mercurial whims of society. We began by witnessing a solitary man at a coffee shop, unfazed by the frenzy of digital distraction, and learned why societies label such a person dangerous. We saw how our social structures exploit a sense of lack, how Marcus Aurelius built unshakable inner strength through nightly self-examination, and how Nietzsche dared us to demolish inherited moral codes and forge personal values. We distinguished loneliness, a craving for completeness, from solitude, a self-chosen wholeness. We identified 4 pillars: radical self-honesty value, independence, emotional self-sufficiency, and intellectual courage that underpin genuine freedom. We acknowledged the costs: misunderstanding, lost relationships, fleeting isolation, and the burden of choice. And we discovered practical steps to cultivate the dangerous independence that makes you immune to manipulation. Now you stand at a crossroads. Will you continue surrendering decisions to every trending narrative, every viral clickbait, every fear-mongering headline? Or will you step into a form of freedom so radical that it renders you unbuyable, undeceivable, and unsilenceable? The practices outlined: embracing silence, conducting honest evening reviews, questioning deep-seated beliefs, managing emotions internally, and daring to think unconventionally, are not mere exercises. They're lifelines to a life lived on your own terms. If something in these words resonates, take a concrete step today. Set aside 10 minutes for uninterrupted stillness. Journal one uncomfortable truth. Challenge a belief you've never dared to question. Notice how the world reacts when you refuse to play its game. Share this message with someone you trust. Perhaps they too ache for genuine independence. Remember, in a culture built on conformity, choosing solitude and self-sufficiency is the most radical act of all. It's not about isolating yourself, it's about reclaiming yourself. That reclamation is the kind of danger the world needs, dangerous to complacency, to mass manipulation, and to empty expectations. Embrace this path, and you will not merely survive society's schemes, but reshape them by living authentically.